The Varelian Empire believed it understood every intelligent species in its reach. It had charts, chemical models, behavioral predictions, and long files full of neat conclusions. Most species fit somewhere on a spectrum: cooperative, aggressive, territorial, logical, hive-minded, solitary. They could all be measured. Humans did not fit. Humans formed bonds with predators. Humans gave names to machines. Humans cried over fallen enemies and then fought twice as hard in the next battle. Every Varelian report about them ended the same way: unstable, pack bonding, strategically dangerous. High Commander Tathrix had read those reports many times. They had agreed with them. Emotions blurred judgment. Attachments created weakness. That was simple evolutionary logic. Then, the ambush happened. The patrol had been routine. A joint anti-piracy sweep near the edge of neutral space. One Varelian cruiser, 2 human escort ships, and a mixed boarding team. The humans had insisted on sharing risk. The Varelians had considered that inefficient but politically useful. Pirates struck from the debris field of a shattered moon. Old mines, hidden rail cannons, and ships with no transponders. The first volley tore through the cruiser's shields. Before Tathrix could issue a full defensive command, explosions rippled along the hull. Compartments vented. Gravity flickered. Tathrix had been thrown across the command deck when a secondary blast ruptured the bulkhead. A shard of superheated metal pierced their side plating, punching through armor and into soft tissue beneath. Pain signals flared white across their neural web. They remembered trying to stand, remembered failing. Varelians did not panic, but their body registered catastrophic damage: mobility loss, internal fluid leakage, systems degrading. Through the smoke, through the wail of alarms, a figure in bulky human combat armor slid across the deck on their knees. Lieutenant Mara Ellison. She had been attached to the Varelian command crew as a liaison observer, a polite title for someone humans trusted and Varelians tolerated. She reached Tathrix and did not hesitate. No pheromone link, no command, no genetic obligation, just decision. Hey, stay with me," she said, voice tight but steady. She pressed a seal patch over the wound. Her gloved hands were slick with dark Varelian fluid within seconds. She didn't pull away. Behind her, another explosion rocked the ship. "Tathrix!" a Varelian officer called over comms. "We must retreat!" "Boarding pods incoming!" Mara snapped her head toward the sound. "How long until the medbay is gone?" 3 minutes, the officer replied. She looked back down at Tathrix. Their vision was dimming. Sound came in distant pulses.
"Oh. Okay," she muttered. 3 minutes is plenty. It was not plenty. She hauled Tathrix up with a grunt, slinging one of their arms over her shoulders.
Varelians were taller and denser than humans. She staggered, nearly fell, then adjusted her stance. Step by step, she dragged them through a corridor filling with smoke. Energy fire scorched the walls. Mara shoved Tathrix behind a fallen support beam and turned, rifle up. Her shots were fast, controlled. She did not try to hold the corridor. She bought seconds. Just seconds. Then she grabbed Tathrix again and kept moving. The med bay was already half destroyed. A human medic looked up in shock as Mara stumbled in.
"I need a field stabilizer!"
"Now." "That's a Varelian?" "Yeah, I noticed." She refused evacuation. When Human Command ordered retreat, she transmitted a short message. Negative. "I am not leaving the commander." By the time the last shuttle pulled away, Mara was still inside the burning cruiser, sealing wounds, rerouting power to life support, and manually dragging Tathrix into an escape pod she had to override to launch. She got them both out with 30 seconds to spare. Tathrix remembered none of that clearly. They woke in a medical chamber that did not smell like a Varelian facility. The air mix was wrong. The lighting too soft. There was a faint, constant hum of human life support systems. They tried to move. Restraints held them gently in place. A shape stirred in the corner. Mara sat in a chair. Armor gone. One arm in a sling. Dark circles under her eyes. When she saw Tathrix's mandibles twitch, she leaned forward fast enough to knock over a datapad. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. "You're awake." Tathrix processed this. "You are injured," they said slowly. She blinked, then laughed once. "Yeah, turns out pirates don't like being shot." "You remained," Tathrix said.
Yeah, you were ordered to evacuate. Also, yeah, silence stretched. Varelians did not ignore evacuation orders for non-kin.
It violated survival logic. "Why?" Tathrix asked.
Mara frowned like the question was strange.
Because you'd have died. That was statistically probable, Tathrix agreed.
She leaned back, wincing slightly. "Well, I didn't like those stats. That answer did not fit anywhere in Tathrix's training. In the days that followed, things became irregular. By protocol, Tathrix should have been transferred to a Varelian recovery ship. Instead, they remained aboard the human frigate Resolute Dawn. The official reason was medical stability during transit. The real reason was that every time a transfer was mentioned, Mara's jaw tightened and she said, "Not until they can survive the trip." She visited every rest cycle. She brought updates about the fleet, about the pirate routes being cleared, about a human engineer who kept trying to pronounce Tathrix's name and getting it wrong. She talked even when Tathrix did not respond much, about Earth weather, about how space coffee was terrible, about how she once got written up for trying to befriend a security drone. At first, Tathrix thought this was interrogation, information gathering through casual speech. But she shared useless things. "Embarrassing things. Personal memories with no tactical value." One cycle, she set a small rectangular object on the medical console. A photo. Humans still used physical images. It showed a group of humans in strange clothing, covered in mud, smiling at a camera. "My family," she said. "Camping trip. We got lost. It rained for 2 days. Worst vacation ever." "Why preserve a record of an unpleasant experience?" Tathrix asked. She grinned. "Because we went through it together." Together. That word appeared often in human speech. It had no direct Varelian equivalent. When Tathrix was strong enough to stand, Mara was there. When they took their first unsteady steps, she hovered nearby, pretending not to worry. Other humans started greeting Tathrix in the corridors. A mechanic tapped the wall twice in what Mara explained was a good luck knock.
A cook sent up a tray labeled, "For the commander who survived." No one had been ordered to do this.
It spread anyway. Varelian observers aboard the frigate sent increasingly alarmed reports back to the Empire. "Commander Tathrix is engaging in non-mandated social proximity. Human crew display protective behavior toward Commander. Commander has declined immediate repatriation twice." The word began to circulate in secure channels. Bonding. It was supposed to be a human problem. A messy mammalian instinct. Varelians relied on pheromones and duty, not emotional attachment. But Tathrix started noticing things. The way their attention tracked Mara's movements in a room. The spike of alertness when she coughed too hard. The unfamiliar internal pressure when she left on a long shift without saying where. One cycle, alarms blared during a reactor fluctuation. It was minor, contained in seconds. Tathrix still found themselves halfway to engineering before realizing they had moved without conscious decision. Mara met them in the corridor, sweaty and annoyed.
the scare?
We're good. Tathrix scanned her for injuries anyway.
She noticed. Her expression softened in a way Tathrix could not categorize. "Hey," she said quietly. "I'm okay." The internal pressure eased. That frightened Tathrix more than the pirates had. When the resolute Dawn finally reached Varelian space, a royal summons was already waiting. Tathrix stood at the edge of the docking bay as a sleek Imperial shuttle latched on. Varelian officials waited inside, rigid and silent. Mara stood a few steps away, hands hooked in her belt. "So," she said, attempting lightness and failing, "guess this is where I hand you back over." "I am not an object," Tathrix said automatically. She huffed a laugh. "You know what I mean." "Yes," Tathrix said. They faced each other in awkward stillness. Varelians did not perform farewell rituals. There was no script for this. Mara solved it the human way. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms carefully around Tathrix's midsection, avoiding the still healing plates. It was called a hug. Tathrix had seen it in human recordings. It was close. Their limbs hovered uncertain, then settled lightly around her shoulders. Her voice was muffled against their armor. "Don't let them take you apart in a lab, okay? I will attempt to avoid disassembly," Tathrix said. She pulled back, smiling, eyes bright in a way humans got when emotions overflowed. "Good." Tathrix boarded the shuttle. As the hatch closed, they experienced a sharp, unpleasant sensation centered in their thoracic cavity. Not physical damage, something else. Loss. Back on the Varelian capital world, whispers had already outrun the shuttle. Courtiers watched from elevated walkways as Tathrix entered the grand chamber. Bioluminescent walls pulsed with soft imperial colors. The air was thick with pheromone signals of unease. At the far end, upon a raised platform grown from living crystal, waited the queen. Vast. Her presence filled the chamber like gravity. Tathrix knelt, head lowered. Silence stretched long enough to become pressure. Then the queen spoke, her voice layered with subharmonics that vibrated through the floor. "So, the rumors are true?" she said gravely. "You've truly bonded with the human." The word echoed through the chamber like a verdict. The word hung in the air like a tocsin. Bond. Around the vast chamber, courtiers shifted, antennae twitching, wings rustling in quiet distress. Pheromones of alarm thickened the air, sharp and bitter. High Commander Tathrix remained kneeling, head lowered, limbs folded in formal submission. Their carapace still bore faint discoloration, where human medical compounds had fused with Varelian bioplate. It had not been fully removed, a visible mark of where they had been. The queen's many eyes studied them without blinking. "Lift your head," she commanded. Tathrix obeyed. "You are aware," the queen continued, "that emotional attachment to a non-hive being compromises judgment." "Yes, my queen. You are aware that humans are classified as psychologically volatile." "Yes, my queen. You are aware that they have destabilized 3 regional alliances in the last 40 cycles over what they called personal loyalty." "Yes, my queen." A pause. "Yet, you remained at the human side during recovery." "You refused immediate reassignment." "You defended her presence aboard your command vessel. Explain." Every gaze in the chamber fixed on Tathrix. Varelians did not speak without purpose. Explanations were expected to be logical, efficient, clean. Tathrix searched for such an answer. "She preserved my life at high personal risk," they said. "My continued function serves the Empire." Murmurs rippled. It was a technically correct answer. It was also incomplete. The queen tilted her head slightly. Medical debt can be repaid through resource transfer, protection, status elevation. "You chose proximity." Tathrix did not respond. "Did you experience distress when separated from the human?" the queen asked. A dangerous question. Emotional admission carried consequences. "Yes, Tathrix said. A sharp hiss moved through the court. The Queen did not react. Define the distress. Tathrix searched their internal sensors, trying to translate something that had no proper Varelian term. Persistent cognitive distraction, heightened threat monitoring, decreased rest efficiency, compulsion to confirm the human's continued safety. Silence. That, said the Queen, is bonding. The word struck harder the second time. Before she could continue, an advisor hurried into the chamber, wings buzzing in agitation. Breaking formal address protocol was nearly unthinkable.
Your Majesty, forgive the interruption.
Priority signal from the outer colonies. The Queen extended a limb in permission. A holographic projection bloomed over the center of the chamber. A Varelian agricultural world rotated slowly, then flickered with red alert markers. Chris Dominion Fleet signatures, the advisor said.
They crossed the border less than one rotation ago. Defense platforms are already lost.
The Chris were brutal expansionists, cold, efficient, and fond of striking where resistance was weakest.
Estimated objective, the Queen asked. Resource seizure and population leverage. In simpler terms, take the world. Capture civilians, force concessions. The chamber filled with anger pheromones now. The Queen's gaze shifted back to Tathrix. Your tactical record against asymmetric forces is unmatched. Tathrix felt the weight of what was coming. You will take the Third Fleet and repel this incursion, the Queen said.
I obey,
Tathrix replied automatically. However, the Queen continued, the human will not accompany you. The words hit like impact. The human is a destabilizing variable. You will deploy with a pure Virelian command structure. Tathrix's thoughts moved fast. Tactical projections formed and dissolved. Chris doctrine relied on fear and rapid collapse. Civilian survival rates under standard Varelian defense models were low.
Mara had argued about that once during a strategy debate on the Resolute Dawn. You plan for victory, she had said.
We plan for everyone we can drag home. At the time, Tathrix had considered that inefficient. Now it felt like missing data. My Queen, Tathrix said carefully, Lieutenant Ellison has direct experience with Chris boarding behavior. Her presence increases adaptive response probability. She is not Varelian, the Queen said. She is effective, Tathrix replied. A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Tathrix was pressing. The Queen's voice lowered.
You argue emotionally.
I argue tactically, Tathrix said.
My assessment processes now include variables I did not previously consider because of the bond.
Yes.
Gasps, hisses, wing buzzing alarm. The Queen watched them for a long moment.
You claim this condition improves your command capability? Yes, my Queen. Prove it, she said. Before Tathrix could ask how, the chamber lights shifted. Another projection appeared, real-time feed from the colony. Christ's ships were already entering atmosphere. Evacuation vessels were clustered at spaceports, too slow to clear orbit.
Standard doctrine would prioritize orbital superiority,
the Queen said. Civilian loss acceptable within strategic thresholds. Tathrix saw the numbers in their mind. It was true, militarily sound. It also meant millions left behind during the first assault window.
What would the human advise?
The Queen asked. The court stirred in disbelief. The Queen was entertaining. This, Tathrix did not hesitate.
She would advise immediate atmospheric engagement, they said. Break formation.
Draw Chris forces away from population centers. Deploy ships as shield cover for evacuation corridors.
That exposes capital vessels to concentrated fire,
An admiral snapped. Yes, Tathrix said. Unacceptable risk, the admiral said. The Queen's eyes narrowed. And to you?
A long pause.
Yes. Silence fell like a physical weight. You would risk fleet integrity for civilian survival probability, the Queen said slowly.
Yes, even knowing the human influenced this shift. Yes, my queen.
The Queen turned away, contemplating. Her attendants murmured in low chemical signals. Finally, she faced the chamber again. The Third Fleet will deploy under Tathrix's command, she declared. And the human will be brought to the flagship. Outrage exploded. Your Majesty, she is not of the Empire. This is contamination. The Queen raised one massive limb. Silence returned instantly. If this bond is a weakness, she said, it will fail under stress. If it is a strength, we will observe. Her gaze pinned Tathrix. You will be judged by the outcome. Tathrix bowed low. Understood, my queen. Far away, aboard a human diplomatic station, Mara Ellison was halfway through arguing with a vending machine that had eaten her last credit when two Varelian soldiers entered. She looked up, confused. Lieutenant Mara Ellison, one said. You are summoned by order of the Varelian Queen. She blinked. That sentence has never ended well for anyone in history. You are to accompany us immediately. Am I under arrest? Status uncertain, the soldier said. Great, she muttered. Love, uncertainty. As they escorted her toward the shuttle bay, she kept talking, mostly to manage her nerves. So, just checking, this isn't about the time I rewired your ship's coffee system, right?
Because in my defense, morale improved 30%.
Neither soldier answered. Her humor faded as she saw the fleet mobilizing outside the station viewports.
Warships, heavy carriers, interceptors forming tight, disciplined formations.
What's happening?
Chris incursion, the soldier said. Her stomach dropped. Which colony? When they told her. She swore under her breath. She had helped train relief teams there. On the flagship, Tathrix stood on the command deck as jump space folded away and the burning colony system filled the view screen. Chris ships moved like shards of metal, angular and fast. Defense platforms were already debris fields. Evacuation progress, Tathrix asked. 17%, an officer replied. Too slow. A signal pinged from the shuttle bay. The human has arrived, another officer said, tone strained. Bring her to the bridge, Tathrix ordered. Mara stepped onto the command deck still wearing civilian station clothes and an expression that mixed awe and anger. You called? She said. Tathrix gestured to the display. Situation. She took it in fast.
Burning cities.
Evac ships struggling to lift off. Chris frigates diving through atmosphere like hunting birds. Oh, hell, no, she breathed. Your recommendation? Tathrix asked. Every Varelian on the bridge turned toward her, some openly hostile. She pointed at the screen. They're hurting people. For leverage or labor. You don't have time for a clean space battle. Standard doctrine, an officer began. Gets those people killed, she snapped. She looked at Tathrix. You've got big ships, right? Tough shields? Yes. Then park them between the Chris and the cities. Make them shoot you instead. Meanwhile, send your fastest ships to escort evac lanes. Don't wait for perfect formations.
Move! That will disorder fleet cohesion, an officer said.
Yeah, Mara said. War's messy. Tathrix made the decision.
Break formation, they ordered. All capital ships descend to low orbit. Interceptors escort evacuation corridors. Prioritize civilian survival.
Shock pulse through the crew.
Execute, Tathrix said. The fleet moved. Massive Virelian warships plunged into atmosphere, shields flaring as Christ's fire slammed into them. Smaller ships peeled off, weaving between buildings and transport craft, drawing enemy fighters away. On the surface, civilians stared up as alien warships positioned themselves like metal shields against the sky. On the bridge, alarms blared constantly now. Shield loss at 12%. Interceptor Wing 3 down to half strength. Evacuation rate increasing. 40%. Mara gripped a console edge, eyes locked on the chaos. That's it.
Keep them busy. People just need time.
A nearby officer muttered, "This is madness." Tathrix watched a transport full of civilians clear atmosphere under the cover of a Virelian destroyer that took 3 direct hits meant for it. Madness, Tathrix said quietly, appears effective. But for the first time since the alarm, the evacuation numbers were climbing faster than the casualty projections. And at the center of the storm stood a Virelian commander who felt fear not for the fleet, not for the Empire, but for a single human on their bridge, and fought harder because of it. The battle for the colony world turned the sky into a storm of fire and metal. From orbit, it looked like the planet had grown a second broken shell made of ships. Virelian warcraft held low positions above major cities, their shields glowing bright as they absorbed blow after blow meant for the surface. Chris vessels darted between them, striking hard and pulling back, trying to break the protective wall. On the flagship's bridge, the air pulsed with warning tones and rapid reports. Shield capacity at 62% and falling, evacuation progress at 51%, Chris reinforcements entering the outer system. Mara Ellison stood beside Tathrix, one hand braced on a console to steady herself as the ship trembled under repeated impacts. She had been offered a crash harness. She had refused. She wanted to see everything. "They're adjusting," she said, watching red enemy markers shift on the display. "They've figured out your shielding population zones." "Yes," Tathrix replied. "They are concentrating fire on our largest ships to force withdrawal. If you pull back, they drop straight onto the cities," she said. "Correct." A nearby Virelian officer turned toward her, mandibles tight.
Your strategy has already cost us 3 cruisers. Mara did not look away from the display.
"And how many civilians would you have lost if you'd stayed in high orbit?" The officer's silence was answer enough. Another impact rocked the bridge. Lights flickered. "Grid 7 collapsing," someone shouted. On the main screen, one of the massive Virelian carriers flickered as its shield failed. Criships immediately swarmed it, like predators sensing blood. "They'll try to cripple it and use the debris to punch through to the surface," Mara said fast. "You can't let them break your wall." Tathrix's mind raced through options. Reinforcements were still minutes away.
Too far.
"Suggestions?" they asked. Mara zoomed the display with quick hand motions. "Woo! See their command ship? That big one hanging back near the moon fragments? Yes. They're coordinating from there. You hit that, even just enough to scramble their signals, their attack gets sloppy. Reaching it requires breaking our defensive line," an officer said. "Not with the whole fleet," Mara said. "Just one fast strike group. In, hit hard, out. Probability of survival for such a group is low," the officer said. Mara met Tathrix's gaze. "But the probability of everyone down there surviving goes up." Tathrix did not hesitate. "Form a strike wing," they ordered. "Fastest cruisers and escort frigates. Target, Chris command vessel. Maximum speed, no formation delay." "You will lead from here?" the tactical officer asked. "No," Tathrix said. "I will lead the strike." Shock rippled across the bridge. "You are Fleet Command. the officer protested.
I am also the most experienced in close quarters Chris engagement, Tathrix replied. Transfer command oversight to second strategist Valoran.
Mara stared at them.
You're going personally?
Yes. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A dozen arguments flashed across her face. Duty. Risk. Logic. Instead, she said, "Then I'm coming too." Every Varelian on the bridge froze. Negative, Tathrix said immediately. Your survival probability in a strike craft is unacceptable. Yeah, well, so is yours, she shot back.
And I'm the one who told you to hit that ship. I know what kind of chaos to expect when humans do this kind of thing. You are not military command in this fleet, an officer said sharply.
No, she agreed. I'm the crazy idea consultant.
And right now you need one on board. Tathrix looked at her. Her eyes were bright with fear, but she stood firm. That internal pressure returned, sharp and hot. Approved, Tathrix said. The officer made a distressed clicking sound. Commander, approved, Tathrix repeated. Minutes later, a Varelian assault cruiser tore away from the flagship, engines burning hard as it and 4 smaller escorts shot through gaps in the defensive wall. Inside the cruiser's command pod, Mara strapped into a crash seat beside Tathrix. The cockpit was built for different anatomy, but someone had shoved padding around her and handed her a headset. "This is officially the worst field trip I've ever taken," she muttered. "Your presence increases mission success probability," Tathrix said. "Let's hope so." Space blurred with weapons fire. Chris' ships tried to intercept, but the strike group moved too fast, weaving through debris and wreckage. "Enemy fighters closing from port side," a pilot called. "Don't dogfight," Mara said quickly. "Keep burning forward. Your goal isn't to win every fight. It's to reach the big one." The pilot hesitated only a second before obeying. The Chris command vessel loomed ahead, a jagged mass of dark metal covered in weapon nodes. "That thing's ugly," Mara said. "It is heavily armed," Tathrix agreed. "Good. Means they didn't expect anyone to be stupid enough to rush it." They plunged into range. The cruiser shuddered as heavy fire slammed into its shields. "Shields at 40%. Targeting solutions disrupted by interference." Mara leaned forward, eyes scanning the chaotic sensor feed. "They're jamming you from multiple points. You don't need perfect aim. You just need to hit something important." "Clarify," Tathrix said. "Engines, sensor arrays, anything that makes them blink." Tathrix relayed rapid-fire orders. The strike group split, each ship choosing a different angle of attack. Missiles and energy lances slammed into the Chris vessel. Explosions blossomed across its surface. One escort frigate took a direct hit and vanished in a flash of white. Mara flinched, but kept talking. "There, that glowing spine along the hull looks like a data conduit." "Hit that!" The cruiser rolled, lining up a shot, and fired its main cannon. The blast tore across the Kreese ship's midsection, ripping open armor and venting atmosphere and debris. "Multiple internal explosions detected," the pilot said. "Enemy fire grew erratic." Back near the planet, Varelian officers noticed the change immediately. Chris formations destabilizing, attack patterns less coordinated, pressure on defensive line decreasing. On the strike cruiser, alarms screamed. "Shields critical! We must withdraw!" the pilot shouted. "One more pass," Mara said. "Make it hurt so bad they can't think straight." Tathrix weighed the risk, calculated odds. Then they nodded. One more pass. They dove again, closer this time. Weapons blazing. The Chris command ship's return fire was wild now. Uncoordinated. Another Varelian escort was torn apart, but the cruiser got through, raking the damaged section with everything it had. A chain reaction of explosions ripped along the enemy hull. Large sections went dark.
Command vessel power output dropping sharply, the pilot said in disbelief. Now we run, Mara said.
The cruiser spun away, engines flaring as it fled back toward friendly lines. Behind them, the Chris fleet faltered. Without tight coordination, their attacks lost focus. Some ships pulled back. Others fought alone and were picked off by regrouping Varelian forces. On the planet below, evacuation ships lifted in growing numbers, streaking toward orbit under escort. By the time the strike cruiser limped back to the flagship, its hull was scorched and half its weapon systems were offline. Mara stumbled out of the command pod on shaky legs.
I am never complaining about boring desk duty again.
Tathrix stepped down beside her, movement stiff from residual damage and fresh strain.
A bridge officer hurried over. Evacuation at 80 to 3%.
Chris's forces in full retreat. Mara let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for hours.
83 is good, she said. That's really good. It exceeds all prior projections, the officer said, still sounding stunned.
Tathrix looked at the tactical display one more time. Cities still burned. Ships still fell. But most of the civilian markers were now in orbit, alive. They turned to Mara.
You were correct, Tathrix said.
She gave a tired, crooked smile.
Don't sound so surprised.
I am not surprised, Tathrix said. I am recalibrating. She laughed softly. Then her expression grew more serious as medics approached to check them both. You know, she said. Back home, we've got a saying. State it, Tathrix said. We don't leave people behind. No, they said quietly. You do not. Far away, in the imperial capital, the Queen watched battle reports stream in, civilian survival far above expectation. Fleet losses within recoverable limits, Chris offensive broken. All tied to one deviation from doctrine, one commander, one human. The Queen leaned back in her living throne, deep in thought. The bond had not caused collapse. It had changed the outcome of a war.